Well, good afternoon. My name is Legislator Jason Richberg, and I'm here with Chad Lennon from he's the director of Veteran and Service Members' Rights at the Touro College Jacob D. Fuschberg Law Center. Hi, Chad. How are you doing?
Good. How you doing this morning?
Good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about veteran services at Touro Law School and some of the other things about yourself as well.
Sure. So I'm the director of Veterans and Service Members Rights Clinic at Touro Law Center. What we do is provide pro bono services to veterans and service members in the community. We'll take any case that we can handle. We have limited resources since we're on grant, so there's some cases that are just too complex we can't take. Primarily, we focus on homeless or at risk of homeless veterans. We work with discharge upgrades, appeals to the VA, landlord tenant, minor criminal, driver's license restorations, just a number of issues that we can utilize to help veterans get back on their feet. And we've noticed that it's usually not one single issue that a veteran has. It's usually layered, multiple issues going on. So one thing that we're trying to do is create a great resource network that we have on our website. So this way we can say, hey, you've been looking for a service animal, here's where you go to, employment issues, here where you go to, and just better connect our community.
I think that's important that you said that because we find in our office that, there might be one issue that people come to us with, but there's probably like 3 or 4 other issues that have been nagging them for a long time. A friend of mine who's a doctor says, yeah, your leg hurts and that's what you're coming to the doctor for. But, you're not going to tell them about your back, your finger, you can't see out your right eye, all those other things, right?
Yeah.
That are important. So I think it's important that people know that, yes, it could be one issue that they can come to you with, but yeah, talk to them about what other else issues they have, because maybe you can point them in the right direction.
Sure. So one thing that's unique is Suffolk County has the largest population of veterans in the state, and some studies as high as number 2 in the country. So it's a large population. And if you think how big Suffolk County is, going all the way out to the Hamptons, it's large. So what we have is housing support for those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. There's a number of great organizations, EOC, Services for the Underserved. There's the Vets Place in Yaphank, the Beacon House. So we try to work through those. We also try to get involved with the different runs in Suffolk County, like the Veterans Run series that goes on usually from about April to November. This year, obviously everything was virtual. I try to participate in every run, and then we try to have the clinic come out and have what stand downs, what we used to have, and looking forward to getting again, is put a table up. Here's who we are. Here's the resources. Here you can contact us, and just tell all your friends about us. We want to connect the community. One of my initiatives is to get a county veteran service organization conference. So everyone that's out there in Suffolk County helping veterans, we can come together and we can share what we do, how to contact us. And now it's better to serve our veteran community that is just massive in Suffolk County.
I think you're right, Chad. I think unity is the way to go. And you said some things that were just amazing to me. We could be as high as number 2 in the nation for the amount of veterans that we have. And that just shows, on the dedication to service that Suffolk County has, but even the probably the depth of resources that we need, because Suffolk County has 1 veterans medical center. Some
Yes,
places, some counties have 2 or 3.
yes.
And if we're number 2 in the nation, obviously we're being underserved. But on top of that, we span 119 miles, right, as an island. And so if you're in Nassau County, you have to go either to Brooklyn, I believe, or you have to go out to to Northport. And so that's not fair to all those other folks as well. So what are some unique issues that are facing veterans?
Well, veterans have I don't know if everyone's heard, but very popular is known as 22 a day, where the count was 22 veterans a day were taking their own life. Now, if you think about that number, just think of a group of 22 people that you're with. That's one day throughout our nation. And that's an average. So sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but that's just the average. And this has been going on for over a decade. The numbers dropped down a little bit to 20.6. That's not enough. That's a massive failure. And if you look at the studies of the veteran population compared to the rest of the population in the country when it comes to suicide, homelessness, unemployment, it's amazing how high the numbers are for veterans. There's lots of theories to this, but the issues are there, and we need to tackle those, and we need to do a better job. It's not fully on the VA to handle this issue. It's a local issue. Yes, it's national, but to really, where the rubber meets the road, is locally. And here in Suffolk County, we need to band together and work together for that population to make sure we drop that number down and to make people aware of it. And if you have someone who's suffering, it could be PTSD and TBI, which are more well-known symptoms and illnesses and injuries that veterans are suffering through. Just reach out. And it never hurts just to say, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Are you thinking of taking your own life? Maybe someone's going to say yes, and maybe that's the way that you make a difference.
Thank you. I mean, it's important. I think, the 22 a day and getting the 22 a day down, especially, what's touching is that I've known some people in my life who are veterans, and, people I went to college with, people who went to ROTC and then I'm getting deployed. And then they got, they said how serious it was, how tough. One of my friends, we were on a swim team together, and he told me a story about how he was, I believe he was in Iraq, and they had camped out for the night, and he woke up to find that there was a landmine right next to his head. And he said, that's just one story that he told me, and he said there's 10,000 others that he hadn't said to me. And he said he woke up with night terrors and all types of other stuff, and how hard it was for him to deal. And I guess especially I read this book, it's called Bowling Alone, and it talks about not how from in the early 1940s, right, when people were coming home from World War II to the 1950s, people were more joiners. So they'd come home and join the VA, and they join the VFWs and a couple other things and other organizations. But as time progressed, the 60s, the 70s, and it definitely veterans were definitely affected by this because Vietnam wasn't treated the same as World War II, right? So, and then obviously the conflicts that we went through in the 70s and the 80s after weren't treated the same. So people weren't joining the American Legions and all those other veterans organizations that you normally would join. So I think if you come home and you feel like you're alone, that almost escalates your emotions, right? So that maybe you get closer to being in that 22 because there's no one there to help you, and maybe we don't know how to ask. I think that's the other thing. I think because we don't know how to ask, I think it's tough.
Absolutely. And especially now that we're in this more isolation period, which is only enabling that number to go up. And I've seen where it's 20% higher since COVID came and everyone was quarantined and staying home. I would say, you see on social media 22 push-ups a day. I would say let's change that. 22 calls. For 22 days, call, reach out to a veteran, and just say hi, because that's going to make an impact. The push-ups are great to bring awareness because there's still a large population in this country that does not understand this epidemic in the veteran and service member community. So bringing awareness, one thing that we did recently was in August, I did a 66-mile hike from Queens to Calverton to bring awareness. And we have the suicide awareness remembrance flag. So I think that is a symbol that we can rally around to bring ourselves together. And many people are misinformed. They think it's just the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans that are this number. No. There's a large portion of Vietnam veterans. And I'm glad you brought that up, because when those who served in Vietnam came home, they immediately went to work. There was no downtime to think about what they went through. Now that number is rising because they're retiring and they have that time to think. Unfortunately, a lot of Iraq and Afghan veterans have issues finding employment, whether it's just employment period or severely underemployed. So now they have that time to think immediately. Also, we're coming up on 20 years of war. And that's the time where we're going to have, the first time we're going to have folks retiring and their entire career has been at war. We have a potential looming mental health crisis in the veteran community, and we need to tackle that and bring awareness and bring resources to everybody.
Thank you. I mean, you brought up some topics that have definitely crossed my mind, especially in our conversation, because I'm the son of a Vietnam veteran. My uncle was a Vietnam veteran. My godfather was a World War II veterans. So, and my great uncles were in World War II. You know, one was patrolling the southern border, and the other one was in the European theater. So I've been surrounded by veterans my whole life. Whether I wanted to or not, my bed had to be tucked in the right way, and a lot of other things. My shoes had to be polished. So, but you're right. You know, one of my godfathers worked in the VA in Harlem, and he would say that I have a lot of VA stories, but he would say that, just having a conversation is so important. And a lot of times these guys and women no one talked to them.
Yes.
Like when they came home, exactly what you just said, they came home, they went straight to work. They didn't deal with whatever was going on. Sorry, our alarm is going off. But what happened is they just adjusted, right? And I think that's the mantra of a veteran or someone who serves, is that they just adjust. Something is blowing up around them, that's fine. They just keep working. They keep doing whatever their MOS is. And I think that's something we could definitely learn. But I think we have to also learn how to deal with things, like how to have those conversations. How do you go home and say, you know what, I'm not okay.
Exactly. And it's not just those who've been in combat. When I was in the DA's office, I was the prosecutor in Veterans Treatment Court, and you see a number of stories come in. And I always go back to, just think about the culture shock of military life. You go in and you're told, this is your lane, you stick in your lane, make sure everyone else stays in their lane. Most of them live on base. Buddies are all service members. So you're just absolutely immersed in this military lifestyle. And even just after your first contract, 2, 3, 4 years, you come back home, that's a culture shock. And there's difficulties adjusting to just that, because you're used to being in your lane and making sure everyone else is in each other's lanes. And you get back to civilian life and everyone is in and out of each other's lanes, and you don't know what to do. I mean, when I first got out, I went to get a haircut. I sit down, they go, what kind of haircut do you want? And I go, I have no idea right now, because I can do whatever I want. So it's definitely difficult. And then some folks don't go to combat, but there's mortuary affairs as an MOS. That's working with the bodies that come home. You have those who have to transport the bodies. We had someone in Veterans Treatment Court who was a motor transport driver who was transporting the bodies back and forth. Those are traumatic events. And it's not just the veterans that deal with PTSD. Any traumatic event can put you into that. The thing to notice is that, yes, there are many symptoms that go with PTSD, and you can look into DSM-5 for what they are. PTS is up to 6 months, and then 6 months or later it becomes that PTSD. You get in a car accident, just something terrible happens where you get notified that somebody has passed away, can be a traumatic event. It's being able to talk to someone, being able to work through those issues, and it's very much I got this lifestyle in the military. I'm fine, let's keep charging ahead. Everyone's relying on me, I can keep moving. And we need to open that up and change that a little bit more and have these conversations.
Agreed. And you said a traumatic event, but what I call it is a traumatic experience, right? Because an event is one thing, but if you're the guy or if you're the Marine or the soldier whose responsibility is to drive those bodies back and forth, that's not an event, right? Because you're doing that every day, right?
Yes.
A friend of mine who I was talking about before, his MOS was a chef. And something happened, and I think there was an attack. And so he was no longer the chef. Now he's the tail gunner, right? He just had to adapt. He thought he was going to be scooping out food, and now he's no longer scooping out food. But I think, you talked about PTSD. How can we work? What can we do? How can we help our friends or our neighbors in dealing with PTSD?
One of the things that goes out there, one of the things that goes out there is that no one knows a veteran better than another veteran, and that's true. And that's not to say that a civilian can't help. Absolutely. Some of the folks that I work with in the veteran community who've never served are fantastic. So anybody can help. It's just wanting to help. What can you do for veterans? Listen to the story that they have to tell, especially when they want to share it. See what's going on. If something looks off, if they're talking about having issues sleeping, that's one of the key signs for PTSD, is having trouble falling asleep, as well as the nightmares that keep you awake. People having trouble in crowds, somebody who's constantly got their head on a swivel, looking around, sitting in the corner. And this is just what we're trained to do in the military, is to constantly be vigilant. Now, the difference is you want to be vigilant and hyper-vigilant in a combat environment, but when you come home, you don't want to be in that red. You want to pull that back. And yes, you still want to be aware what's going on, but that hyper-vigilance is what can be pushing you into a danger zone, especially that isolation. So support groups are great. Team Red, White, and Blue, the Dwyer program, Emerging Vets and Players, and you can go out to these organizations and see that you're not the only one with these stories. Talking to a therapist to deal individually with your own issues. Because the biggest thing is you're not alone. Don't isolate yourself. And if you think someone that you know is isolating, call them up, stop by their house, whatever it is, reach out to them and make sure they're doing okay. Even if you think it and they're saying no, just say, I'm there for you. Let's go get coffee together. Why don't I come over to your place and let's play a video game, or whatever they like to do.
It's funny. So I was in Houston for a cousin's wedding, and I remember, my godfather worked on a Navy ship, and so in World War II, and so it happened to be that not his ship, obviously, but a ship of the same class was there. So I was on the boat, and I called him, and I said, Mr. Evans, that was his name, so tell me about the ship. And he's like, well, why are you asking me? I said, because I'm on the ship now. And so what would have been a normal, 10, maybe 5-minute conversation was a 2-hour conversation. And he's blind, and he'd been blind for about 25 years. But he was able, I told him where I was, and he was able to walk me through the ship, the whole ship. And if I didn't have service, he called me back. I don't know how he did it, but he called me and said, well, you got lost, didn't you? And then he showed me where this is the galley, and this is the here, and this is where I sat. Oh, you saw that gun? You had never used that gun. That was a bad gun, because it was just ingrained in his mind. And the joy that he got from just, reliving the good parts of combat, or even just, that someone asked him about what was going on. And I think that's also important, having that conversation. Tell me about your experience if they want. My father didn't really want to have those conversations. He would every now and then he'd have like a piece of a story from Vietnam, but he didn't want to go into a whole lot of detail. So what about women and minority services? So is there any, what can women and minorities who are veterans, how can they access your program? Is there anything else for them as well? Because sometimes there are some other barriers that are around.
So I'm here to help every veteran. Don't care what your background is. Veteran, service member, I'm here to help you. One thing that goes on with discharge upgrades is, so a lot of folks don't know this either, is that if you received a discharge that was not honorable, you can put a package together, and that's one of the things we do. We put a petition together to request a discharge upgraded. You may not get all the way up to honorable, but you may be able to get to honorable. And what they had is a couple of memos come out that gave a liberal view towards PTSD, TBI, MST, post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and military sexual trauma. That if you can have some kind of documentation of that, that if you were discharged with less than an honorable discharge, you have a better chance of your discharge being upgraded. So then you could receive even more benefits from your service, and pretty much right or wrong, because if someone goes through, is a great Marine, I use a Marine example because I'm one, and we're the best there is out there. Just gonna throw that out there. If you go through an event and so you're a great Marine, you're doing everything you're supposed to, having a great time with your buddies, you're leading them, you're doing everything awesome, and you're a top performer. Something happens, and all of a sudden the performance goes down, and next thing you know, they're popping on a urinalysis that they're marijuana or something. That's probably an issue related to PTSD or TBI. And when you get that diagnosis of a PTSD, because you come home, you talk to someone, well, that is a great example of how we can get a discharge upgraded, because it was a traumatic event. They were unable to deal with that event, and their life started to spiral out of control. And that's what we want to prevent, is that spiral. As soon as we start spiraling, we want to stop it before it gets even further. And there's just so many ways you can go down that hole, which we don't want to see. One of the things that we do as well is go to Veterans Treatment Court. And we want to make sure that all the veterans in Veterans Treatment Court know that we're there to help them with legal issues and provide resources. And if you go to tourolaw.edu/vetsclinic, you'll see our webpage. There's how to contact us, news, events, and resources. And we're constantly adding to that because we want to make sure that we have a one-stop shop in Suffolk County, which we don't have right now. But this can be the first one of where can I go for a service? Here's a place to go. Here's the link, and I can contact them. Warrior Ranch Foundation, Palomine for horses that are great service animals. Paws of War, America's Vets Dogs for service dogs. There's just a ton of resources, and we keep adding to it.
So, so you mentioned your website. So the resources to how to find, veterans, veterans related help. Can you say that website one more time, please?
tourolaw.edu/vetsclinic. And you can find how to contact myself and the other attorneys I work with. You can find different events that are coming up, and you can find the different resources, some national, some through the state, but most of them through the community in Suffolk County.
So do you guys offer employment services as well as legal assistance?
So we have resources that, such as Department of Labor has a veteran-specific point of contact to help veterans find jobs, because if you look for employment, there are employers that have a specific point of contact if you are a veteran to look to bring you on board, because you have a specific set of skills. And one thing that's a shame is I hear from some of the grunts that are corporals and are saying, I don't have anything to put on my resume. No, absolutely not. You have led your fellow Marines in combat. You've held them accountable. You've had accountability of them, the equipment, the planning you've done. So there is definitely things that any service member can put on their resume of what they have done, and bring that management, bring that responsibility and accountability to whatever employer that they want, or opening up their own business.
So there's that commercial, it says the school of life, right? And I think, the school of the military is as important, if not more important, because you're right. You're responsible for a group of men and women, to take them, day after day, making sure that they're doing whatever their MOS is, that they're responsible to handle that. And if you are somewhere in that chain of command, that's important. Another friend of mine, he was in the Navy. I don't want to go back and forth with that, but he was able to get a job because he worked on Hueys and some other stuff on boats, and he was able to get a job with an aircraft mechanic like right away. And it wasn't until he asked for some help. I think he ended up going to the VA. He's based in Florida, and he was able to get a great job with a local aircraft mechanic, and they gave him training and schooling, and he was able to get more certifications than he had before. But again, it starts with asking for help, right? And I think so. How could we, as everyday citizens, better connect to the veterans community on the island? What can we do?
You probably know more veterans than you realize from this county, because it's so large. Just listen to the stories. And one thing that we find in our community is a lot of folks say thank you for your service, but they want you to have that uniform hung up in the closet. Hey, part of service is it's for life. Just like those who go to college and you're alumni and that college is always a part of you, the service will always be a part of us. It helped shape us and mold us into the people that we are today. So that's never going to go away. Listen to the stories. It's just like treating anyone else with respect, and just listen to what they have to say. If they reach out for help, help them. Or if you say, I don't know how I can help you. What do you need? Maybe I can go with you somewhere. Maybe I know somebody and can reach out for you. It's all about networking and just finding what works for you. You might find a resource that you don't really match up too well, and that's fine, because it's got to work both ways. And you just go for another one. So, maybe the American Legion doesn't work for you, but the VFW does, or maybe vice versa. Find what works for you.
But I guess the first step is you gotta open up that door and you gotta pick up that phone.
Yes, it is a sign of strength to ask for help. I don't care if you're James Bond, no one does it alone. James Bond has the British government behind him, so no one is out there doing it all by themselves. There is always support behind everybody.
And especially if you watch the old movies, he had the Q. So Q would give him. So I'm a James Bond fan. So Chad, I want to thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation. Is there anything else you want to close out with?
I just want to thank you for the time. Hopefully this reaches out to some folks for some help. Don't be afraid to reach out to me at the clinic. I'm happy to help in any way that I can and use us as a resource. And thank you for having me on.
No problem, Chad. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your continuing service to the veterans and the people of Long Island, especially Suffolk County. I think you're one of those gems that we don't hear about, but we need to hear more about. So, and if you have any other issues, please reach out to the Veterans Center, the Veterans Clinic at the Jacob D. Fuschberg Law Center. And thank you again for this one-on-one, and we'll see you next time.